What does the Bible say about Christian dating? Well, I remember Jesus said, "Thou shalt after 6 months of dating get engaged." Well, Jesus didn't say that, and he also doesn't speak in an English accent or whatever that was. Anyway, in today's video, I'm going to share with you 3 lessons I've learned from 3 Bible verses about Christian dating. These are three things that have changed my mind and really helped me when I was dating my wife, actually. So this is practical stuff, it hits close to home, and I hope you'll be benefited from it. Now, while Jesus didn't directly talk about Christian dating, there are principles that we can take from the Bible to apply it to this aspect of our life. And the first one comes from 1 Timothy. Now, to give you some context here, Paul is talking to Timothy about how the church should conduct itself, like the people within the church, and how they should treat one another. And this is what it says: "Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters, in all purity." So how does this relate to Christian dating? How does this relate to Christian relationships? So here's the deal. When we think about dating these days, we feel like dating is its own thing, right? Its own thing. Like, you get certain different parameters, there's different rules to it, there's different obligations, and like it feels like its own thing. The reality is that it's very cultural, right? In terms of this idea of a dating stage, in the Bible times, they didn't really have that, okay? And it was different, and you can argue with all the different, problems of how it used to be. But at the same time, something is clear. Marriage is distinct. Marriage is a covenant. There are different rules. You become one person, right? Two shall become one. That's different. That's a covenant. Dating is not a covenant. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that we really need to focus on how we're seeing the other person. We often see it as like ownership, like that's my girlfriend or that's my boyfriend. The truth is that that's your sister, that's your brother. Okay, now am I saying that if you wouldn't hold your sister's hand, you can't hold your girlfriend's hand? No, I'm not saying that, but it's the principle that applies. It's the thinking that goes into it. So you need to ask yourself, how am I treating this person, and what kind of allowances am I giving myself because I feel like, well, we're dating, so we're allowed to do this? Is that true? Okay, here's the deal. Especially for men, we need to take accountability. I struggle with this, and I'm going to talk about it in the next section too, but I struggle with this because I want the other person to lead. I don't want to have to lead. I don't want to have to take responsibility. I don't want to have to take accountability. I don't want to set up those boundaries. I'd rather if she does that, because that puts responsibility on me. That means that I got to do something. I'm naturally a lazy guy. I don't want to do that. But God calls me to. And God calls you to if you're a young man. We need to treat them as a sister. We need to set up boundaries in place, not only just physical boundaries, because everyone loves to talk about physical boundaries. I gotta set up all the physical boundaries. No, also emotional boundaries and what you're talking about. What kind of conversations are just for marriage, and what kind of conversations are not for yet, because you're gonna play with her heart. You don't want to do that, right? So that's one of the first things. Treat her as a sister as best as you can, and just keep that in your mind as you're thinking about it. One of the questions that I would ask you, if you're like, is this okay or is this okay? And I would just say, well, if this didn't work out, then would there be baggage? Would there be regrets? Would there be things that you're like, man, I wish I didn't do that with her. I wish we didn't do that together, because, that's going to be somebody else's wife, right? That's going to be somebody else's husband. I wish we didn't do that. That's a question I would be asking now. And it's not a means to shame you guys, like if you've made mistakes. And I think most of us that have been in relationships, in dating relationships, we've made mistakes. It's not a means to shame you, but it's to refocus you even now, okay? Like the past is a past, but right now, what can you change? What boundaries can you put up to just really prevent treating them in a way that's not healthy and not godly? So the second verse is in Genesis 3, verse 6. Now, this personally rocked me. I don't know if it's going to hit you guys as hard, but if you're anything like me, this will blow your mind. So you remember when Adam and Eve, they're in the garden, right? And Eve is talking to Satan near the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And they're having this whole conversation, this whole dialogue back and forth. And Eve takes the fruit, right? And she eats the fruit. And I had always thought about it like, they're having this conversation and Eve eats the fruit and then she goes find Adam and she's like, here's a fruit and you can have it. And this is from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Adam eats it and then, sin happens, right? Obviously. But what I've come to find out is that's not quite right. So let's read it. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was a delight to the eyes and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her. I don't think you guys understand how big a deal that is. Who was with her? So it's not as if they were having this separate conversation and then all of a sudden, Eve brings the fruit to Adam and Adam really doesn't know what's going on. No, Adam was sitting there idly by as they were having this whole discussion, and then he follows his wife's lead to eat the fruit. And this hits on what we need to learn about Christian dating, Christian relationships in general, is that men have this tendency, even from the beginning of time, to be passive, to pass off responsibility. Why? Because we don't want to be held accountable, because we want to be able to blame somebody, because we just don't want to lead. It takes more work. It takes more thought. I would rather be a follower. I would rather just kind of be passive. But that's the sin. That's like one of the first sins in the Bible. So what do we learn from this? Well, even in a dating relationship, there's times and there's places where you as a man can make choices. And as a woman, you can allow him to make those choices, like encourage him to make those choices, encourage him to take the lead. And for guys, it's like, hey, even as something as small as planning a date, like plan the date. Take the leap, take the risk, and know that if it doesn't turn out, like that's okay, but take responsibility for that. As simple as that may seem, a lot of guys were like, hey, you know what? You plan the date. Sure, you make the decision. Sure, you decide where we go. You decide. Because we don't want it to be bad and we don't want to take accountability for that. We don't want that to reflect badly on us, so we'll just push off the responsibility. I'd encourage you, as small as the decisions may seem, take responsibility, lead, and that allows a woman to step back into her feminineness, right? Even if she's gotten this place of like making all the decisions and that's how she's had to be, you can allow her to take a step back and say, hey, I can make the decisions. Know this, there's a distinction here. You're not her husband. You're not her husband yet. Know that, okay? So there's certain decisions that you're not going to make, okay? But you can be taking those steps out of leadership even within your relationship. Okay, quick break here to tell you, if you guys are struggling with online lust, maybe there's an addiction there. Most men are, a lot of women are. If that's something you struggle with, I want you to sign up for Covenant Eyes. Covenant Eyes will send a report of your internet usage to an accountability partner in your life, and they'll know what's going on, okay? That accountability is so important. You can get it 30 days free, 30 whole days free if you sign up in the link in my description. This is an affiliate link too, so some of the kickback helps the ministry as well. But I really think this is going to be helpful for you guys if you want to get serious about this addiction or this habit. I think it'll be helpful. Okay, now onto the video. The last one here, I've never heard anybody connect it to Christian dating before, but I was reading it the other day and it feels like it connects a lot actually. And it's in Acts 5, okay? And this is the days of the early church. There's this couple named Ananias and Sapphira. Now, I'd encourage you to read this for yourself. Like, it's a really good section. But let me give you a little bit of a summary of the story. So basically, Ananias, he sells a plot of land. And what they were doing in those days is they were sharing everything within the church. Yours is mine, and yours, give it all to the church, and you need this, and I need this, and I'll give you this. And it was a very symbiotic relationship, okay? But he wanted to keep some of the money. So he gave some of the money to the church and he withheld some of it. And Sapphira, his wife, knew what was going on. Okay. When Ananias, was confronted about this, he lied. He said, no, I gave everything. He died on the spot. Okay. Later on, Sapphira was questioned about this as well. She didn't know everything that happened with Ananias, like dying. So she was like, yeah, he gave all the money. Yep. No, there's nothing wrong here. She died on the spot too. What lesson is here? That if you lie, you die? not quite, but lying is wrong, absolutely. It's that our first and foremost commitment should be towards God and not each other. It's so easy to form that tight bond, like ride or die, which is good. This is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But if you leave God out, if you value that connection over your connection with God, then you're going to get in a lot of trouble. Like, it's not, if you agree on a compromise, that doesn't make it right. If you agree to sin together, that doesn't make it right. Okay? Just because you're both in connection and cohesion and agreement doesn't make it right. So here, they were both in on it, right? And Sapphira knew what was going on, and she felt like it was her ultimate good to, yeah, I'm going to stick with him. He's my ride or die. I'm going to, go out with him, whatever. But that was wrong. That was wrong. She should have confessed it. Ananias shouldn't have led her down that bad path too. So, this is one of the things that we can think about. Maybe, the situation is going to be very different for a dating relationship, but even these little compromises, hey, stand up for your ultimate and your number one connection. You're like, okay, you know what? I know you want to go down this path, but my number one is God, and God would not want me to do that. And God does not, and I can't betray my relationship with God for my relationship with you. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on Christian dating in the comments down below and some of the scripture passages that have helped you along your journey. Let me know if you want to hear more content and videos about this topic. And thanks to everyone who supports my ministry on Patreon. It is seriously such a blessing. YouTube ads are not kind of what they used to be in terms of the revenue that they bring in. And so I rely heavily on Patreon and people joining there to support the ministry and support my family. So I really appreciate those who join on there. And you can get a free book, my free book on there if you want it. It's A Letter to My Father, What Your Son Wants to Tell You but doesn't. It's a book for sons and fathers, and I've had mothers and daughters read it too, and they've been benefited from it. So if you sign up on Patreon, I'll send you the book for free if you're in North America. So thank you so much, and until next time, God bless.